Théo Hayez was an 18-year-old Belgian who had arrived in Australia in November 2018. He had recently finished high school and wanted to make the most of his free days before returning home and starting college. His plan was to travel as a backpacker across Australia and explore as much of the country as possible along the way. In May 2019, while in Byron Bay, an Australian town located in the state of New South Wales with an estimated population of 30,000, Théo disappeared and was not seen anywhere else. From that point on, people began to wonder what had happened to the young man. His family, together with the local community, joined forces to assist in the investigation, which gradually gained increasing attention across the country. Before reaching his destination, Théo had also traveled through Melbourne, Tasmania, the Northern Territory, and Queensland. As he approached his final destination, he stayed at a hostel exclusively for backpackers. On May 31st, Théo was seen buying alcoholic beverages at a market, which were intended for a barbecue with some friends. This barbecue took place at a bar called Cheeky Monkey around 9:35 p.m. The friends socialized, drinking and eating at the location for almost 2 hours until around 11 p.m. when Théo left, marking the last place where he was seen. The young man had entered Australia at the end of 2018 on a working holiday visa. At the time of his disappearance, he was a week away from returning home to Belgium. After 3 days without any news from Théo, his mother, Vinciane, called the young man's cousin, Lisa Hines, who lived in Brisbane, an Australian city, and asked if she had seen him. Lisa said she had no idea where he might be, which left Vinciane even more anxious about her son's situation. She asked Lisa to check the last places the young man had visited to find any clues about his whereabouts. Based on the information gathered by Lisa Hines, it was confirmed that Théo had never actually boarded the bus to Sydney as he had planned. Additionally, it was noted that all of his belongings were still intact at the hostel, including his passport, which weakened the hypothesis that he might have changed his plans and gone elsewhere. After obtaining this information, the young man's family decided to contact the New South Wales Police on June 6, 2019. At the same time, Wake Up, the hostel where the young man was staying, also contacted the police on the same day, 3 days after he had failed to check out as scheduled. The police immediately declared Théo missing, thus initiating investigations and search efforts. The Australian police used helicopters, drones, tracking dogs, search divers, and climbers. The social media platform WhatsApp also assisted investigators in trying to recover records of the missing person's conversations. However, this data was limited due to the app's encryption. Phone signals and the young man's Google account data were also used to establish a timeline and the events that occurred that night. From this data, it was possible to determine that Théo walked nearly 3 kilometers during the night. After leaving the bar, he went to a beach called Talon Beach. On his route, he passed through residential streets, Arakwal National Park, and finally a dense forest that provided access to the beach. The police then theorized that the young man ended up in an area of the beach known as Cozy Corner, as this was the location indicated by his phone's GPS, where he reportedly sent 2 messages to acquaintances and watched part of a YouTube video. According to the investigation, Théo's phone rang for the last time around 1:40 a.m. in the vicinity of that same location on June 1st. If everything had gone as expected, he should have checked out of the hostel on June 3rd and taken a bus to Sydney. But as we know, that did not happen. Since his closest family lived in Belgium, thousands of kilometers away, direct assistance from them was not feasible. As a result, the police issued a call for volunteers to help with the search for the young man, which attracted several locals who empathized with the family's pain. Days after the official disappearance, Lawrence Hines, Théo's father, traveled to Australia, anxious for news about his son. While there, he went public, making a deeply emotional appeal for any information that could help the police find his son.
When I left Belgium, I promised Theo's little brother, Lucas, that I would bring his brother home. Please, help me keep my promise to him. People have the power. Let love rule. Thank you.
A few days later, however, Lawrence returned to Belgium, deeply despondent and without any news of his son. Subsequently, the entire family issued a statement thanking the public for their support throughout the process. The group of volunteers worked for weeks alongside the police, searching for clues about Théo's disappearance. They scoured forests and beaches, distributed posters with information about the young man, and pleaded for anyone with news to come forward. One of the volunteers, Sherry de Rosario, gave an interview to a local news outlet saying, "We saw his family, and obviously over time their pain didn't go away. And that's what tends to happen with this kind of loss. So we really felt compelled to help them find closure." After several days without any progress, the police declared that they had exhausted all search resources and closed the investigation. However, the local residents refused to give up. Several volunteers gathered in areas between Byron Beach and Talon Beach where Théo's phone last rang. The locals also held on to the hope that the young man had merely gone out to explore his identity and would return soon, which increasingly seemed unlikely. According to Sherry de Rosario in Byron, sometimes there is a feeling that people kind of go a little crazy, exploring their identity, trying new things, or just having a weekend party. But they usually come back, and so I think when Théo didn't return, everyone was shocked that he was truly missing. Byron is a very safe and friendly environment. We don't expect terrible things to happen here, she said. On September 16, 2019, after the official search conducted by authorities was brought to an end, Théo's case was transferred to a regional court responsible for supervising ongoing judicial matters. A specialized group of legal professionals continued working on the investigation. A dedicated website was also launched so that anyone could submit information related to the case. In a public statement, the young man's parents said, "We continue to trust the work being carried out by the officials leading this process and their legal team. We still believe that somewhere, someone holds information that could help reveal new evidence. We are pleading for witnesses. We ask anyone who may be hiding information to come forward." After the inquiries were completed, the prevailing theory among investigators was that Théo may have accidentally fallen from a high coastal area near the lookout point. At the request of Théo's family, journalist David Murray, known for covering major criminal cases, joined the efforts to examine the situation more closely. At the time of his disappearance, Théo was wearing a black hoodie, a gray cap, beige pants, and black shoes. About a month after his disappearance in July 2019, a gray Puma cap similar to the one Théo was wearing when last seen was found. The item was discovered in the scrubland of Talon Beach by community search volunteers, and the family stated that they believed it belonged to him. DNA tests were conducted, but it could not be confirmed whether the cap belonged to the young man. A police spokesperson said that detectives were still investigating while preparing a report for the coroner. In May 2020, a year after the disappearance, Théo's parents said that, as difficult as it was, they believed it was highly unlikely that he was still alive. On a Facebook page dedicated to finding him, they wrote, "Yes, however, Théo has left this poor land and is currently enjoying time with whales, turtles, and dolphins. Vincian, Lucas, and I, while looking at Théo's beautiful smile in the photos of his Australian adventure, are relieved to see that he spent the last 6 months of his short life in a beautiful country, meeting wonderful people." For the family, it was highly unlikely that Théo had traveled the route indicated by Google on his own, especially at night. His cousin Lisa stated, "After we were able to access his Google data, we realized that on the night he disappeared, he took a very unusual path through dense forest. It is impossible to imagine that he did this path alone." Forensic psychologist Tim Watson suggested the theory that Théo's disappearance could, in fact, have been a crime. He pointed to a possible perpetrator, a serial killer who had already been accused of the disappearances of backpackers Erwan Ferriou and Hugo Palmer in February 2019 in the city of Port Macquarie. This hypothesis, however, was not pursued by the police, who considered the stronger theory to be that Théo fell from a cliff and was swept out to sea. In May 2021, Byron Bay residents gathered on the beach to create a large sand mandala decorated with orange flowers, feathers, shells, and stones to commemorate 2 years since Théo's disappearance. Beachgoers offered prayers, seeking answers about what had happened. One local resident said it was still hard to believe he was gone and that the community hoped someone would come forward with information. Australian crime correspondent David Murray spent 3 months with an unofficial search group and documented his experience in an Australian true crime podcast called The Lighthouse. In early 2021, Théo's family released a statement thanking the public for their support throughout the year. In their words, they said, "The generosity of strangers surprised us and continues to help us endure this nightmare. We miss our son dearly, and together we must find out what happened to him. 1 year later, we believe there is much more to Théo's story than has been revealed." And that's it, everyone. The case of Théo Hayez remains shrouded in mystery, and to this day, no one knows for sure what happened that night. For those of you who have been following the case, tell me, what's your theory? What do you think happened to him? We continue to wait for any updates or news that may emerge. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss any content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.